Each time we go climbing, we have a great ability to review our movement and understand the various things that we can do to get better at our climbing just by taking our phones and taking the time to record video of ourselves climbing. So today in this video, we're going to talk through how to use your phone and how to begin to review your own climbing movement so that you can perform better at your sport. Using your phone to record yourself while you're climbing can be a really intimidating thing to begin at first, especially if when your gym is a busy gym or you're like me and you're not the strongest person at the gym you climb at. But once we get over those initial hurdles, it can be really a helpful way for us to continue to practice our sport and train even when we're not in the gym itself. So there's a couple things that recording gives us and opportunities it provides for us more than just posting send footage online. One of the things that it can do for us is it can help us remember our beta. It can show us what we're actually doing as opposed to what we just think we have done on the wall. It allows us to notice our progress in lots of small ways, and it allows us to kind of see what parts of our beta need refinement. First question you want to answer is, when do you set up your camera to record? What points does it make sense to do this? You know, if you have the storage space on your phone and the battery life, you certainly can record a whole bouldering session. Dealing with large chunks of video like that can be cumbersome, so you might want to just think about pausing periodically and breaking it up into smaller sections. But once you've found a little bit more practice with this, you'll learn pretty quickly what are the most important times to record. So here's some examples of when it really makes the most sense to turn on your phone to set it up and to get some footage. When a boulder is likely going to be a really long project for you, this is a good time to get your camera set up. When you are possibly working a problem that's on a board, that's a great option because board problems aren't going to be taken down when the set gets redone. So you can monitor your progress over long-term seasons or even years. You can do this on your set problems in your gym as well, but depending on the turnover rate at your gym, those projects and those kind of periods might be a little bit shorter. Another time that it makes a lot of sense to record yourself is if the boulder that you're working on has particularly intricate or detailed beta. Oftentimes, when we are approaching a really technical problem, we don't really know what we're doing on the climb until we've actually seen it, or sometimes the sequences can be so specific that we can get them mixed up. And so having a video there to record those sessions will really help you in the long term as you're trying to work on that progress. The last category that I think makes a lot of sense to pull up your camera and to record is when you're doing your movement drills and intentional practice. This is something I don't see people do very often, but it makes a lot of sense because oftentimes we will be applying a movement drill or some kind of skill facet, and we want to actually be able to see what are we doing to improve that movement. Is it actually getting better over time? And sometimes we might think we're doing the drill correctly until we review the video. A great example of this is flagging. We often think we're really extended with our flags, but then when you pull back and look at the tape, you'll realize you barely were sticking your foot off to the side at all and not really getting the counterbalance effect that you should be getting with that. The first essential piece, aside from your phone, that you need to have is a little miniature tripod. This is so helpful for making sure that this process is simple, fluid, and easy, and it's going to make sure you get the best quality footage. Most of us have experienced that one time or another trying to set your phone up inside of a shoe to get the angle, and it just doesn't work very well. Because of that, I consider a tripod, a little mini one that's lightweight and portable, an essential part of my gym climbing kit. It always comes with me alongside my finger care tools, some snacks, and a journal to take my notes with. You want to find a position where you can set up your phone and you can get the entire boulder or at least the very specific crux section if it's a route or sequence you're practicing there to record on. You want to make sure the whole boulder or problem is in frame at that point. You want to make sure that the angle allows you to see all of the key hand and foot holds, especially once you're on the wall. Sometimes if the movement is particularly scrunched up, our bodies can obscure what our hands and our feet are actually doing. So you want to set the camera up in a position that will allow you to see the full view of what you're doing that whole time. An angled approach off to the one side or the other tends to be a little bit better than directly from behind or directly from the side. you're just trying to gather data. So just make it simple and make it easy so that you're consistent about doing it.
Hey climbers, I know that Climb Strong is a coaching company, and I feel like we've got the best coaches in the business. I also think that we have the best training programs in the business, and we put all of those up on our training platform, and you can check it out for just 12 bucks a month. This is going to let you as a self-coach climber build the program that you want, that's going to lead you to better results, and we've got great tracking metrics and everything else on there, so go check it out.
When we start to think about how we're going to review this video and what we're going to look for, there's three main categories that I'm going to talk about. The first, we're going to call beta memory. The second is beta comparison. And the third is going to be our beta critique. So for beta memory, what this does is it serves as a digital memory of what we actually did when we were climbing. Often we get on a problem, especially if it's one that's really, really technical and detailed. We are so immersed in the movement that we have no idea what our body was actually doing while we were on the wall. Really frequently, you'll be on a problem that has, or a route that has very specific order of sequences for hand and foot movements. And you maybe do it right one time and you never really realize what happened in the past or the future attempts. So being able to go back and see that time it worked out best, what was that order of sequence, can be really, really helpful. This can also be really helpful if it's a problem you're going to be coming back to over and over and over again. You can save those little bits of learning and review them while you're not climbing and help to reinforce that memory. So when you come back on future attempts, you're more ready to implement that change in your beta. Recording your attempts like this gives you something to review back at home and can be a really great place to begin some type of visualization practice for your climbing. You can start with having the visual that's on your phone, and if you fail on the problem, you can then expand that in your mind and visualize the successful version of what that move might be. After you've practiced this a little bit, you'll be able to do this without even needing to have your phone handy. The next category I want to talk about is beta comparison. Beta comparison is when you are taking footage from yourself and comparing it to footage that you've gathered either from your friends who are also climbing that same problem, or maybe if it's a board problem, someone that you've seen online that's done a successful version of that. When you're doing this with your friends, it can be a really, really fun way of getting some communal engagement going on. When I'm comparing video with myself and other climbers, what I'm looking for are the main differences between myself and other climbers, whether it's both successful or unsuccessful differences. When you're viewing two people doing the same thing side by side, it can really reveal a lot about your own strengths and your own weaknesses in comparison, and can show a lot of ways that you can improve as you try to mimic other climbers. When I'm comparing video between two or more people, here's some of the main questions I like to ask of that video to help me understand what I'm looking for. Am I going for the same holds in the same order? This seems pretty simple, but it is the most key thing to look for. If you are doing something that's dramatically different than someone else, it's worth asking, why are you doing it that way? Am I using the same starting positions? Oftentimes on crux moves, we're going to be starting from the same hand and foot holds, but there's a lot more detail about the starting position that often is lost when you just think of the specific holds your hands and your feet are on. For example, you want to look at how is your foot placed upon the hold? What hip position are you using? Are they open or are they closed? Are you flagging very much or not? You also want to look at how other climbers move and ask, is their body tracking in the same plane as yours is? We are very rarely moving just in a straight line towards our target hold. Often there's some kind of an arc that we're moving in. And being able to see how are you moving in comparison to somebody else can provide even more little bits of information for you to use. Generally, the more we have control in that end position of a movement, the easier that is for us. So if you see a climber that can do a move and when they reach that end position, they look really solid, you're going to want to understand what did they do to get themselves into a position where they could hold really, really cleanly at that end point, whereas you might have a lot of swing that you're trying to keep under control. You can probably add many more different categories than these for yourself, but the main thing you're trying to do is look at what somebody is doing and why it works or why it doesn't work in comparison with what you yourself are doing. The best part about this beta comparison is, again, that fact that it can be a really fun communal exchange with other people. The other thing that's really great about this is we can't always use our friend's beta, but it's really great when we can see a difference and understand why it might not work for us even though it works for them. Once you start getting really good at this type of comparison, it's going to move really naturally into the third main purpose that we're going to use that video for, and that's what I would call beta critique. So when we are using video for beta critique, what we are doing is we are using the video we have to understand specifically what we are doing and why it isn't working and what we need to change about our approach of the movement to be more successful in the future. Step one is making sure that the way you're approaching this movement is going to be a successful one and can work moving forward. I have one friend who always comes up with the most obscure and unique beta, and it works really well for them, but not many of us are outliers like that. Sometimes we get really excited about our unique movement style and it's just going to lead to a dead end. So that's where being able to look at our own sequences and understand, is this actually going to work, is really helpful. Once you are confident that you are approaching the problem with the correct sequencing and the appropriate positioning, now we can start to understand why we are not sending yet. Instead of focusing on the whole problem, I like to focus on just the specific 1 to 2 move sequence that we are failing on. It can be a lot more helpful to really isolate what you're trying to understand when you're just focused on that one point than still trying to observe the whole boulder and trying to make every single sequence better. Start with where the failure is happening and then we can build out from there. Once you start getting really intricate into the beta that you're finding, each problem is going to provide a lot of unique opportunities for understanding things and unique questions that are specific to each problem. But I'm going to provide 3 questions that I always think are a starting point that generally are applicable to pretty much any movement that you're doing, regardless of what style the climb is. So the first question I always ask when I'm reviewing video of myself failing and trying to understand what I need to do better is, what is the first point of contact that failed while I was doing that move? Often when we're climbing, it feels like we simply just didn't get the reach we needed and we just didn't latch the hold. But if you go back and review the video, you might find that before your hands even got close to the hold, one of your feet popped off a lower foot position. Being able to understand and see that that's what the problem is then helps you be able to target what actually needs to improve. If that's the case, maybe the problem is you weren't applying enough core tension to hold yourself into the wall. Focusing on the hand is going to take you down the wrong direction at this point. So recognizing where your first point of failure is and targeting that is going to be the first starting point that you want to look for. Another key thing to look for is where your momentum stops in a given movement. Seeing where your body stops moving towards the given target hold can provide you a lot of information about what went wrong in that sequence and why it caused you to fail. Sometimes this can lead us to realizing that we're driving the movement primarily with our arms and we need to learn how to push more with our legs or with our hips. Or maybe you'll find that there are certain body positions that you're in that are locking you in and restricting your movement. This can be really common with things like knee bars and toe hooks and heel hooks. Sometimes they can hold your body into a position and can limit the range of motion you can have in a given sequence. Infrequently, you might notice that the problem is not that you're not getting enough movement, but that your movement continues too far after you've latched the hold. Seeing your movement continue after you've reached a hold shows that you have a lot of extra force that you're trying to slow down. And it might show that the key is not to learn to apply more power, but you need to find how do you meter things back so that you can have a little bit more control over that sequence that you're trying. Once you start to understand where you're getting stuck in a given movement, it can help you ask some really important questions that will solve that problem for you and help you make some more progress. Maybe you need to adjust your feet so you can get a little bit more range out of your ankles. Maybe you need to try to find how do you drive the momentum with your hips or pull with your knees a little bit more. Maybe the problem is that you just need to pull extra hard with your arms after all. If you don't understand why your movement is being restricted or why you might be overdriving or underdriving your movement, you're not going to be able to understand how you need to correct that so that you can be more successful moving forward. Lastly, the thing you want to look for is always understanding what are your hips doing at any point while you're on that climb. Understanding the position and what our hips are doing on the wall reveals so much about our climbing, because where our hips go, there our body's going to follow. Our hips usually are where the center of gravity is. So if our hips are not in the position we want them to be and are not moving the direction we want them to be, it's going to be very difficult to be really successful in our climbing. One of the first things I like to look for when I'm observing the hips in a position is at what point do they start to sag or fall away from the wall in a failed movement. Just like noticing when the first point of contact fails, often before our hand fails to latch a hold or a foot slips off the wall, you can begin to see your hips start to pull away from the wall. This is the first indicator that this movement was not likely going to be successful. Understanding why your hips pulled away from the wall in this way can help you understand what is the problem. Sometimes the problem might just be you're getting fatigued and you're not able to maintain the core tension that you need there. If you are climbing a particularly steep or tall problem, sometimes those hips pulling away can be a sign that there's some hesitancy going on. Another thing observing our hips can reveal is a lot about our own flexibility while we're on the wall. Sometimes when we're climbing, we just don't notice what our flexibility limitations are because we are so immersed in the moment of climbing. But then when you go back and you review your footage, you can notice that your legs and your hips in particular might look really stiff and quite clunky where you expected them to move somewhat fluidly. Once you kind of see this, it can really provide some insight for you to find some better mobility drills and some exercises that can help you unlock those hips so you can get better use out of them. You might also know that your hips have really, really good flexibility, but you're failing to utilize the flexibility that you have. This is a very basic introduction, and hopefully it's going to help you be a little bit more comfortable when you want to take your phone out in the gym and record your movement. And hopefully it will give you some confidence that when you go through that footage, you know what you're looking for and you can actually apply some learned skills from that. Here's a few final thoughts so that once you've kind of practiced these skills, you're ready to push them a little bit further and get even a little bit more nuanced in how you use your video. The first tip and the most important one is just start practicing this with your friends right away. Offer them feedback when they send you some video. Tell them what you think they did really, really well, and then offer some suggestions of why you think their movement wasn't perfect and what they maybe could have done to have been a little bit better. And hopefully you should be asking them to do the same of you. This practice can be really, really a fun way to continue having a really great, thoughtful dialogue around our movement, whereas a lot of times it's easy just to have it be something we do and we don't put a lot of focus in. Another thing that I really like to do is play Monday morning quarterback while watching World Cup climbing. It's really fun to observe the best climbers in the world, and when you see them fail, try to understand what they did wrong when you know they are more than skilled and more than strong enough to do that. Observing these highest level climbers and really being very, very detailed and trying to understand how did somebody that is so good and so strong still fail at this, and trying to put those pieces together will make it a lot easier when you review your own video, which is likely going to be much simpler to analyze and understand. Hopefully this will give you some confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to take my phone out and I'm going to record myself while I'm climbing. It has nothing to do with vanity, and it has nothing to do with you feeling like you are trying to highlight yourself. It has all to do with you trying to provide yourself the best opportunities you can to be a better climber. Once you get skilled at doing this, recording yourself is going to be the closest thing that you're going to be able to find to having a coach standing right next to you. And it's going to be the coach that understands your movement the best because you were the one that was just up on the wall. So I hope you guys practice this all soon, and I hope I see more people pulling their phones out in the gym and recording themselves this year.